At Thanksgiving dinner, my brother handed me a flash drive and said, "Play this before dessert." The video showed my parents arguing, and my dad screaming, "We should have left her at that gas station." I looked at my mom. She cried, "You weren't supposed to survive the winter." I was still holding my fork when my brother slid the little black flash drive across the table like it was a loaded weapon. We were halfway through Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house in Toledo, Ohio, and everyone had been pretending to like each other for the sake of the holiday. My brother leaned back, crossed his arms, and said, "Play this before dessert." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Something in his face, tight jaw, flat eyes, told me this wasn't a prank or some stupid family slideshow. My stomach tightened. Everyone went quiet except for the stupid ticking wall clock my dad insisted on keeping even though it ran a minute slow. Dad tried to laugh. "Can this wait?" "No," my brother said. "I didn't want to plug it in." My hands were shaking and I didn't even know why yet, but I did it anyway. I opened the laptop sitting on the kitchen counter, slid the flash drive in, and clicked the only video file on it. The footage was grainy at first. Then it sharpened just enough for me to recognize the hallway near the garage, my parents' security camera. In the video, my mom was pacing, arms crossed. My dad followed behind her, frustrated, rubbing his face. "I'm tired of pretending," Dad snapped. "She keeps digging. She keeps asking questions." Mom shook her head, voice trembling. "We should have told her the truth when she turned 18. "What truth?" Dad shouted. "That we were supposed to leave her, that the whole point was to walk away before winter. You think she'd understand that?" My vision tunneled. My brother kept his eyes locked on me. Dad stepped closer to Mom in the video. "We should have left her at that gas station. That was the plan. We agreed. You're the one who backed out." Mom's face crumpled. "I couldn't. I already loved her too much." "Loved her enough to ruin everything," Dad said. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like something was crushing it. The video kept going, their voices rising, twisting, unraveling everything I thought I knew about my childhood. Then my dad said it, the line that tore something open in my head. "She wasn't supposed to survive the winter." The room around me went dead silent. The laptop screen froze on their angry faces, mid-motion. I felt like I was floating outside of myself. I turned toward my mom. She didn't even look at the screen. She was already crying. Not little tears, full, heavy sobs like someone finally cut the rope she'd been clinging to. "You weren't supposed to survive the winter," she whispered, almost apologizing to the table, to me, to the air. My dad didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just stared at me like he had been caught in something way bigger than anger or shame. My brother said, tell her everything. I'm done being the only one who knows." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I pushed my chair back, almost knocking it over. The world felt tilted, wrong, like the house was suddenly too small to hold all of this. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice raw, barely hanging on. "What winter? Why would you leave me anywhere?" My mom covered her face with her hands. My dad finally spoke, voice low and defeated. "It started before you were born. You were never supposed to be." He stopped. He looked at my brother, then back at me, and for the first time in my life he looked scared, truly scared. "Sit down," he said. "If you're going to hear this, you need to sit." I didn't sit. Because whatever he was about to say, I knew it would break something that couldn't be fixed. I didn't sit down, even though my legs were shaking hard enough that I had to brace myself on the back of my chair. My mom kept whispering, "I'm sorry," like it was the only word left in her throat. My dad looked like he was trying to do math inside his head, calculating how much truth he could spill before the whole family collapsed. But I couldn't listen to them yet. My brain was already sprinting backward, dragging me through every memory that suddenly felt contaminated. I grew up believing my parents were strict but normal. Not perfect, just average Midwestern parents who argued sometimes and bounced checks and forgot school events, and had loud fights after midnight they thought we didn't hear. I always thought the tension between them was money and stress, and the normal resentment that builds up in families. I used to joke that my childhood smelled like burnt coffee and pine sol. We lived in a small two-story house on the edge of Toledo, the kind of place where winters hit fast and hard. I remember wearing oversized coats because Mom always bought them at thrift stores for me to grow into. I remember Dad working long shifts at the auto plant, coming home with his face gray from exhaustion. Nothing about my childhood screamed dark secret. Not until I hit 13 and started noticing the weird gaps. Like how there were almost no photos of me as a baby, not until I was around 2. Mom said she lost the old photo albums in a move. But we never moved after I was born. We'd always lived in that same house. Or how Dad would get tense whenever I asked about their families. They always dodged questions about grandparents and cousins. My brother, 5 years older, knew better than to ask. He'd distract me or change the subject, like he was protecting me from something. Then there was the gas station memory. It didn't make sense until tonight, but it had haunted me for years. I must have been around 5. We were on some road trip I barely remember, and we stopped at this little rundown gas station somewhere outside Detroit. I remember Mom crying in the bathroom for a long time while Dad paced outside. I remember getting the sense that something was wrong, even though I couldn't put words to it at that age. When we finally got back in the car, my parents didn't look at each other the entire drive home. I told myself it was just a random fight. Every couple has them. Right. As I got older, the weirdness got harder to ignore. Every winter, Dad would get extra protective, borderline paranoid. He'd double-check the locks, the furnace, the basement windows. And Mom would watch me like she expected something to happen. She'd ask if I felt sick more often. She'd say things like, "Promise me you'll tell me if you feel off." I thought she just had anxiety. But the biggest red flag, the one I always shoved down, was the way adults looked at my family when we went out. Sometimes there was this recognition, like people wanted to say something but held their tongues. My parents always rushed us away when that happened. Even my brother treated me strangely. Protective, yes, but also guilty. Like he owed me something he couldn't pay back. Back then, I assumed every family had their unspoken rules, their closed doors, their forbidden topics. But now, standing in that dining room with that frozen video still on the laptop, everything clicked in a way that made me feel physically sick. The missing photos, the winter paranoia, the gas station, the secrecy, the constant tension, all of it pointed to a truth I wasn't ready to face. I finally looked at my brother and said, "How long have you known?" He swallowed, eyes burning. "Since I was 9. 9, a child. And he had been carrying something this heavy for over a decade. My stomach twisted. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because," he said quietly, "if I did, they said something bad would happen. To you, to all of us." My mom sobbed harder. My dad closed his eyes like he was bracing for impact. And I realized this wasn't going to be one of those stories where the truth brings relief. The truth was going to hurt worse than the lie ever did. I finally sat down because my knees weren't working anymore. The dining room felt too bright, like the overhead light was exposing every crack in our family. My brother stared at our parents like he was daring them to speak. My mom kept trembling. My dad rubbed his forehead like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. "Start talking," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "All of it now." Dad didn't respond right away. He just pushed his plate away, turkey untouched, and folded his hands like he was preparing to confess to a judge. My mom spoke first, but her voice was thin. "Your father and I, before you were born, we were involved with people we shouldn't have been." I laughed, but not because it was funny. "That's your intro, really, that's all you've got." Dad shot her a look, then turned to me. "We were young, stupid, and we thought we were owed something better in life." My stomach twisted. "What does that even mean?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "It means we got mixed up with a group. A stupid survivalist circle up near Monroe. They called themselves the Winter Faith." The name hit me weirdly hard, like a bell I didn't remember hearing but somehow recognized. My brother nodded. "Yeah, that's what they called themselves." Dad continued. "Most of them were just angry people blaming the world for their own failures, but a handful, they believed in that old folklore crap. The idea that a child born under ice could change a family's luck, but only if they survived their first winter alone, abandoned." I stared at him, disgust rising up my throat. "Please tell me you didn't believe that." "We didn't," Mom said quickly. "Not really, you participated," my brother snapped. "Don't soften it." The room felt colder. Dad inhaled deeply. "We were desperate, we had debt. Medical bills. Your mom's job had just cut her hours. They promised if we followed their tradition, just once we'd be taken care of." Tradition. He said it like it was something wholesome, like carving pumpkins or baking cookies. "So the plan," I said slowly, "was to leave me, somewhere in the cold and just hope I died." Mom shook her head violently. Not hope, we weren't supposed to watch. The group said if we checked, if we interfered, everything would fall apart. That the child had to either die or prove their worth. It was sick. We were sick for listening. My brother leaned forward, voice tight. Tell her the rest, Dad. Dad looked like he was trying not to choke. We drove out that night. You were barely 2 months old. Snowstorm coming in. They told us exactly where to go. A gas station off I-75. We had instructions to leave you in a box near the dumpsters. Then we were supposed to drive away, no looking back. My vision blurred. My skin felt like it didn't fit. Mom whispered, I held you for a long time in that parking lot. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't do it. Dad's voice hardened. And she didn't. She broke the rule. She put you back in the car, and from that moment on, everything got worse. He wasn't wrong. Everything after that year had been a mess. Job losses, financial disasters, fights that nearly tore our family apart. I always thought it was bad luck. Now I wondered if my parents believed it was something else. So you think your bad luck is because I lived? I asked. Neither of them answered, because their silence was the answer. I felt something crack inside me, but my brother wasn't done. He leaned in, eyes sharp. Tell her why they wanted a baby in the first place, he said. Dad stiffened. Mom froze. My heart sank. There's more, I whispered. Oh yeah, my brother said. So much more. My brother looked at our parents like he'd been waiting years for this moment. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't unsure. He was done. Tell her why you needed a baby, he repeated, voice sharp enough to cut the air. Dad's jaw clenched. Mom shook her head like she was silently begging him not to continue. I felt a dull pressure building behind my eyes. Just say it. Dad exhaled slowly, like the truth weighed 100 pounds. We didn't just fall into that group, we sought them out. For what? I whispered. For help, Dad said. Financial help, medical help, a reset, we were drowning. Mom covered her face. We were scared, so stupid. We were told there were ways to get clean slates, but there had to be a trade, a sacrifice. My stomach dropped. Dad's voice hardened. They said a child would seal the pact, that the family would be protected, that our debts would be erased. And for a while, it looked like it might actually happen. I stared at them. You're telling me you had a child because a cult told you it would fix your life? Mom sobbed. We didn't plan it that way. But when I found out I was pregnant, they told us you could be the answer. That we could finally catch a break if we followed through with their ritual. My brother nodded bitterly. They didn't tell you this part. They wanted a baby before you were even conceived. My entire body went cold. What? Dad didn't deny it. They told us the timing mattered, he said quietly. You had to be a winter-born child, delivered during the cold months. Left before your first snow. Mom's whisper came out broken. You were never supposed to come home with us that day. It hit me all at once. I wasn't an accident. I wasn't a blessing. I was a transaction. I felt sick. So I was what? Some kind of twisted payment? Dad looked away. Mom nodded miserably. Yes. Something inside me snapped, but my brother wasn't finished. His eyes flicked toward me soft for the first time that night. There's more, he said. Something they didn't tell either of us until I was older. Mom straightened, panic cutting through her grief. No, don't. Dad's voice was sharp. You promised you wouldn't tell her. My brother ignored them and turned to me. They weren't going to walk away from the gas station that night. My heart thudded. What do you mean? You weren't supposed to be left alone to die slowly, he said. The group told them a quicker death would seal the luck. Leaving you in the cold was only the public story. They were supposed to finish it themselves before the snow started. My vision pulsed. No, Mom covered her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably. Dad's voice cracked. We didn't do it. Your mother couldn't go through with it. But the plan, my brother continued, wasn't abandonment. It was a killing. And that's why Dad has hated you your entire life, because in his mind, everything fell apart the second Mom refused to finish the ritual. I felt like the room got ripped sideways. My heartbeat was everywhere at once, throat, wrists, skull. Dad stood abruptly. That's enough. No, my brother said. Not even close. I looked at my dad, really looked, and saw something I'd never been able to name before, resentment. It had been there my entire life. You blamed me, I whispered, for surviving. Dad's silence was confirmation. My breath came in sharp, painful bursts, but my brother wasn't done delivering shocks. He leaned forward, expression grim. Tell her what they promised you in return, he said. Tell her what you were willing to trade her life for. Neither parent spoke, so my brother did it for them. They weren't paying off debts. They were giving you somebody else's identity, someone who disappeared. My skin prickled. Whose identity? My brother locked his eyes on mine. Yours, he said. You were never supposed to be you. You were supposed to replace a baby who died. The room spun. Mom screamed, "Stop," but it was too late. The truth hit me harder than anything so far. My entire existence had been built on someone else's grave. My parents were both crying now, my mom openly, my dad in that silent, rigid way where you can tell the tears burn but never fall. My brother sat back like he'd finally set down a weight he'd been carrying for half his life. Me, I felt empty, like someone had unplugged the part of me that felt things in real time. All I could feel was a cold, humming clarity. I stood up. I need air. My mom reached for my arm. I stepped back before she touched me. Don't, I said. I walked out the front door and onto the porch, closing the door behind me. The cold night hit my face hard, but it felt good. Real, honest, not like anything inside that house. I leaned on the railing and focused on breathing. I felt like if I didn't hold myself together, I'd split right down the middle. Across the yard, the neighbors' Christmas lights blinked stupidly cheerful, like the whole world had no idea my life had just been sawed open. I don't know how long I stood there before the door creaked open behind me. My brother stepped outside quietly. I knew this would break you, he said, but it's been breaking you your whole life anyway. I didn't look at him. You should have told me. I wanted to, but every time I tried, Dad, he swallowed. He told me if I told you, the group would come back, that they'd finish what was started. That's not real, I said. I said it, but it didn't feel solid. My brother hesitated. It was real enough that they believed it. I turned then, finally facing him. Why now? He sighed, breath visible in the cold. Because I found something they hid, and once I did, I realized you weren't just neglected, you weren't just resented. He paused. You were supposed to be a replacement. I felt sick again. For who? He shook his head. Not yet. You're not ready for that. I hated that he was right. So what now? I asked. My brother sat on the porch step. Now you make a plan. A plan for what? For whatever you decide to do next. I stared at him. What do you think I should do? He didn't blink. Burn their whole world down, not literally, he said, raising his hands. But every lie they built, every connection they still have to that group, every document they forged, every piece of the past they buried, make them face it all. I exhaled hard. Where do I even start? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me like he was passing a matchbook to someone standing in gasoline. This, he said, is where you start. I unfolded it. It wasn't paper, it was a birth certificate, not mine, but the name listed on it, my last name. My parents' names, and a baby girl born 2 years before me. 2 years, I felt my chest tighten. Who is she? My brother stood. That's part of the truth they were never going to tell you. And it's the part that gives you leverage. Leverage, a new word, a useful word. I tucked the certificate into my coat pocket. Inside, through the window, I could see my parents in the dining room, my dad pacing, furious. My mom collapsed in a chair, shaking. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt like someone standing at the edge of a story I finally had control over. They're hiding more, my brother said. A lot more, files, photos, letters, records. They kept everything that mattered locked away. Where? He looked at me with a grim, quiet certainty. Dad's workshop, the locked cabinet. I nodded slowly. A plan was already forming, cold, precise, sharp. They wanted to build a future on lies? Fine. I'd burn the lies down until there was nowhere left for them to hide. I walked back into the house with my brother behind me. The air inside felt heavier, like the walls were listening. My parents both looked up when I entered. Dad's face was stiff, guarded. Mom looked wrecked. I didn't say a word. I went straight past them toward the back of the house, toward the workshop door off the laundry room. Dad stepped in front of me. You're not going in there. Move, I said. No, his voice had that old steel in it. The same one he used when I was a kid, and he wanted to make sure I knew my place. Only now I wasn't afraid of him. My brother came up next to me. She knows about the cabinet, he said. Mom gasped. Dad's jaw tightened. You little, Dad started, but my brother cut him off. I don't care, he said. I'm done covering for you. Dad looked like he wanted to explode, but I pushed past him while he was distracted and grabbed the workshop door handle. Locked, figures, I turned back. Give me the key. Dad crossed his arms. You don't want to see what's in there. That's exactly why I'm opening it. I waited. Dad didn't move. I held out my hand. Key now. He shook his head. Mom whispered, please don't do this. It's only going to make things worse. My laugh came out sharp. Worse than planning my death. Worse than replacing a dead baby with me like some kind of bargain bin miracle cure. I think we're already at peak worse. Dad didn't move, but my brother did. He reached into one of the drawers under the hallway console, grabbed a flathead screwdriver, and popped the workshop door lock in under 5 seconds. Dad lunged forward, but I pushed into the workshop before he could grab me. The smell hit me first, old sawdust, oil, cold metal. The room was cramped, cluttered, familiar in that stay-out childhood way. Dust floated through the yellow light. And there it was, the metal cabinet against the far wall. Heavy, industrial, with a thick padlock on it. My brother shut the door behind us and braced it with his foot while Dad pounded from the other side. Open it, he said. I don't have the key. He smirked. I do. He reached under one of the workbenches and pulled out a small magnetic box. Inside was a silver key. He handed it to me. Dad was sloppy, he said. He always hid things in the same places. My pulse thudded as I slid the key into the lock. It clicked open with an ease that made me sick. I opened the cabinet, and everything changed. Inside were folders, dozens of them, all labeled by year. Early ones dated back before my parents even met. A thick binder sat on the bottom shelf, a plastic bag full of old photos, another bag full of letters, but the thing that froze me. A file labeled with the name from the birth certificate, the baby before me. I grabbed it with shaking hands and opened it. Inside were photos. A tiny newborn wrapped in a striped hospital blanket, a wristband, medical papers. A coroner's report. I swallowed hard. She had died from exposure. Exposure. The same death they wanted for me. I felt my throat close. My brother whispered, you see why I couldn't wait anymore. But something else caught my eye, a sealed envelope taped to the back of the cabinet. Newer, white, unweathered, with my name on it. My real name, not the one on my birth certificate. My real name, the one they had erased. I reached for it, hands trembling. My dad roared from the other side of the door, do not open that. But I was already sliding my finger under the edge. When I opened the envelope and pulled out the papers inside, my heart didn't just sink. It stopped. Because the document in my hands wasn't a letter. It was a missing child report, dated 25 years ago, with my baby photo, my face, my real family's names, and a case status stamped across the bottom. Unresolved, child PRESUMED ABDUCTED. My parents didn't just plan to abandon me. They stole me. I stared at the missing child report so long my eyes stopped blinking. My baby photo, my real baby photo, looked up at me with that scrunched, red newborn face every infant has, but knowing it was me made the room tilt. My real name. My real parents' names, a date. A hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan I'd never heard mentioned in my entire life. My brother whispered, I'm sorry. Dad, on the other side of the door, kept pounding like he could break through pure wood with guilt alone. I slid down until I was sitting on the concrete floor of the workshop. The worst part wasn't that they stole me. It was that suddenly, everything made sense. Every winter freakout, every missing baby foe, every time Dad looked at me like I was a weight dragging him to the bottom of a lake. I looked up at my brother. Why would they even do this? Why take someone else's baby? My brother's voice cracked. Because the first one died. I shook my head. But why steal another child? Why not just grieve? Move on? Why this insane ritual? He glanced toward the door like he expected Dad to break through any second. Because Dad wasn't willing to start from zero again, he needed a replacement, not a new child, a swap, a fix. A fix for what? He sank to the floor next to me. For the mess he made. Before he could explain more, the workshop door finally splintered. Dad shoved his way inside, wild-eyed, breath-ragged. Mom stumbled in behind him, sobbing. He looked at the missing child report in my hands, and just deflated. Like the fight drained out of him. Dad rubbed his face, then said quietly, you weren't supposed to see that. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Why did you take me? Why me? Dad didn't answer at first. He walked to the opposite side of the workshop, leaned against the bench, and stared at the floor like it might offer him a way to undo the last few minutes. Then he finally said it. "I didn't want a second child." My stomach twisted. "What?" He lifted his head, eyes cold and distant. "Your mother did. After the first baby died, she refused to let it go. She was drowning in grief, talking about trying again immediately. But we were broke, hurting, falling apart. And I knew another baby would destroy us." Mom sobbed, "Don't do this, please." Dad ignored her. He kept talking. "I went back to the group. I asked for help again, not money this time, guidance." His voice wavered. "They said if a child was meant to replace the one who died, the transition had to be controlled." My brother whispered, "Tell her the real part." Dad swallowed hard. "They said if we found a child born in the same season, close in age, and raised her as our own, our luck would reset. Our life would reset. It would be like the first one never died." My stomach dropped. "So you stole me to erase her?" Dad didn't flinch. "Yes," Mom crumpled. I pressed my back against the cabinet to keep myself upright. "What about my real parents?" Dad's jaw tightened. "They were young, they didn't have money, they wouldn't have gone far looking." My brother stood up, voice shaking with anger. "They did, Dad, they never stopped. They filed reports every year. They posted online. They kept the case open. They did everything you didn't want them to do." Dad looked at him with something like resentment. "That wasn't my problem." I felt something cold clamp around my heart. "You ruined their lives," Dad shrugged. "They shouldn't have left their baby unattended in a hospital hallway." I froze. "What?" Mom shook her head frantically. "Don't say that," Dad cut her off. "It's the truth. She wasn't even in the room. 1 minute she stepped out. 1 minute, that's all it took." My hands shook so hard the report rustled. "You took me because it was easy." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because the truth, the deep, awful, chilling truth, was written all over his face. He didn't take me because of grief, or desperation, or ritual, or twisted belief. He took me because I was convenient, because he wanted a replacement, because he wanted a reset, because the universe handed him a moment where no one was looking, and he moved without hesitation. He stole a life because it fit the shape of the hole in his own. No remorse, no fear, no guilt. Just a cruel, selfish calculation made in a hallway while a mother washed her hands. And that realization, that cold, monstrous reason, hit me harder than everything else combined. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't saved. I wasn't chosen. I was taken. I stood up slowly, still holding the missing child report. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt this cold, steady calm settle over me, like my body finally understood the truth and was done wasting energy on fear. Dad watched me with a strange mix of dread and stubborn pride, like he was still convinced he'd done what he had to do, and that I'd eventually understand. He had no idea what was coming. I looked at Mom first. She was a wreck collapsed against the workbench, whispering apologies she couldn't take back. I didn't say anything to her, not yet. I turned to my brother. "You with me?" I asked. He nodded instantly. "Whatever you need." Good. Because I already knew where this was going, I held up the missing child report. "This goes to the police." Dad barked a laugh. "You think they'll believe you, after 25 years, with no DNA, no witnesses, no proof?" I held up the thick binder from the cabinet. Papers, letters, instructions, every sick part of their ritual and theft laid out in documents they were arrogant enough to save. "I think you kept plenty of proof." Dad lunged forward, but my brother blocked him. "You don't get to touch her," he said, voice low. I walked past them and into the hallway. Mom weakly followed, pleading softly, but I didn't stop. I went straight to the living room, grabbed my coat, and pocketed every document I needed. Dad stormed after me. "You're not taking that anywhere." I opened the front door. "Watch me." He grabbed my arm. For a split second, something in me snapped. I turned, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "You took my entire life. I'm taking yours back." Then I yanked my arm free and walked out the door. The next 48 hours were a blur of cold clarity. I went to the police with everything, every document, every photo, every report, every journal entry from Dad's cabinet. My brother came with me. He told them everything he'd overheard over the years. Every fight, every threat, every slip of the truth he'd pieced together. They didn't dismiss us. They didn't laugh. They didn't make excuses. They opened a full investigation. Within days, DNA samples were taken. Mine, my parents', my brother's. Dad fought it. Mom didn't. And when the results came back, it confirmed everything. I wasn't biologically related to either of them. But I was a match to the missing child case from Ann Arbor. Still active, still open, still waiting. My real parents, older now, worn by decades of grief, were contacted by detectives before I met them. I didn't want a movie moment. I didn't want cameras or hugs or any forced connection. I wanted truth first. We met in a quiet office. They cried the moment they saw me. I didn't know how to react, so I just let them cry. They told me they never stopped looking, never stopped hoping, never stopped imagining what my life might have become. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magically healing. It was raw and awkward and overwhelming, but it was real, more real than anything I'd been given before. The police arrested my father first. Kidnapping, child endangerment, conspiracy, fraud. A dozen charges, maybe more. Mom turned herself in later. She wasn't innocent, but she wasn't the architect. The prosecutors saw that. My brother moved out. I went with him. We didn't attend the hearings. We didn't visit. We didn't send letters. Dad received a long sentence, long enough that he'll probably die in prison. Mom got less, but she'll never have a place in my life again. She made her choices. I made mine. Months later, I stood in front of the old house one last time before it sold at auction. Snow was falling lightly, the first snow of the season. For a moment, I felt that old ache in my chest, but then it passed. I wasn't their winter child anymore. I wasn't their mistake. I wasn't their replacement. I was myself, finally. I turned away from the house and walked to my brother's car. He asked if I was okay. I looked at him, feeling something close to peace settle in my chest. I am now, I said. Let's go, I'm done here. And I meant it.